Safety is the reason your reality doesn't match your vision, and I'm going to prove it to you. We'll move through 6 gates to reveal one mechanism, then prove it across every domain of your life. We will then connect that mechanism to scripture, manifestation principles, and the physics and mathematics underneath it, so you can see it as one pattern. By the end, you won't just believe, you'll know how to use the pattern on purpose. Welcome to ANZA. Now let's take the body, not as aesthetics, but as the first place reality answers you. Because your body is your container. It's how you move through life, how you show up, how you carry stress, hope, discipline, and desire. You can feel the change you want. You can see it in your mind. You've tried the plans, the routines, the new me resets. Some days you do everything right and still nothing seems to shift. New intention, same ending. So here is the real question. Why does your reality move in slow motion, if it moves at all, when your vision feels so clear? This isn't about vanity. It's about the ache of living inside a life that doesn't yet match what you've seen. The ache of being ready internally while your outer world keeps giving you the old version. And when that happens, you start turning it into a verdict. Undisciplined, inconsistent, or maybe it isn't for me. But what if you're not missing effort? What if you're missing the mechanism? If you've ever thought, I can see it, but I can't seem to live there, you're in the right place. If there's one thing I want you to take from gate 1, it is this. You're not failing. You're reading the wrong signal. Your system isn't ignoring you. It's obeying something. So we're not going to turn it into a character flaw. We're going to turn it into a pattern you can finally see. And once you can see the pattern, you can walk it. We're going to understand it, respect it, and use its laws on purpose. That's how this becomes a method, not a mood. Your nervous system doesn't follow desire, it follows safety. So if the new you still feels unsafe, your system will keep pulling you back to what's familiar. Cue gate 2. I want you to picture a background field first. Half red, half blue. Threat on one side, safety on the other. Think of this background as a canvas of possibilities. Physics has a branch called quantum mechanics, where outcomes are not fixed at first. They exist as probabilities until something settles them into one result. So for our purposes, call this the field, the space where possibilities exist before one gets selected. Across that field is the wave, a spread of what could be, not yet settled into one outcome. Now here's the shift. Out of that field, bubbles pop out as states of identity. In wave particle language, these bubbles are particles. They are what you get when possibility collapses into a lived position. Now to summarize these three, the field is the space where possibilities exist. Think of it like a library. The wave is what turns those possibilities on and makes them available. Think of it like the lights coming on in the library so you can actually see the books. The bubble is the identity that you choose and live from. Think of it like the one book you pick up from the library shelf and start living by. Now we'll give character to these two bubbles, the threat bubble and the safety bubble. To be clear, this is a continuum, a spectrum of states, but we'll use two bubbles to simplify. The threat bubble is an identity built around threat. The safety bubble is an identity built around safety. In other words, you do not just feel threat or safety. You live from an identity that makes one of them feel like home. Then your nervous system does what it always does. It wires itself around whatever identity you are occupying. If the identity is threat defined, your body organizes for threat. If the identity is safety defined, your body organizes for safety. So the goal is not to bully the nervous system into change. The goal is to shift the identity you are standing in so the nervous system can finally agree with the future you keep trying to reach. Quick aside, if you've seen David Hawkins' map of consciousness, it is the same idea in a different language. So this is just a spectrum of states from contraction to expansion. I'm translating that into nervous system terms, threat to safety. Okay, let's pretend right now your current self is sitting inside the threat bubble with all your familiar habits, procrastination, overthinking, and doom scrolling included. The threat bubble is wrapped in a shield that tells your system this is safe simply because it is familiar. It is not true safety, however. It is pseudo safety. In the distance is the safety bubble. That bubble holds the new you and all the versions of you that match your prayers and your vision. They are not bad, but from the point of view of the threat bubble, they are unknown, and unknown is automatically tagged as potential danger. This is why new habits feel so uncomfortable. They are not threatening in and of themselves. They only feel threatening from the perspective of the threat bubble looking out through that shield. When we talk about moving from threat into safety, we're not forcing the threat identity to disappear. The identities exist as two locations you can live from. In this example, the shift is that you change where you live, where you position yourself. Through repeated experiences of felt safety as the new you, your point of view shifts out of the threat bubble and stabilizes inside the safety bubble. As you settle there, visiting the threat bubble starts to feel heavy, costly, and wrong in your body. Going back to the old habits feels like stepping back into stale air. That is the reversal. Your nervous system now protects your position in the safety bubble and treats stepping back into the old bubble as the real risk. Your nervous system is not sabotaging you. It's simply protecting your presence in the bubble you are currently standing in. The work we're about to do is to move your lived position into the safety bubble. Safety is the hidden constant that makes all these teachings actually work in your body. If you honor the law of safety in your system and you keep choosing an identity that feels genuinely safe to inhabit, your body has to follow. That law is already active. Everything you do now, even what you call bad habits, is rooted in safety, just a distorted form of safety. Being a couch potato feels safe because you avoid the risk of trying and not measuring up. Anxiety feels safe because it is your mind trying to scan the future so it cannot surprise you. It is an attempt at creating safety by trying to predict the future. None of these serve your highest self, but they prove the point. Your system is already prioritizing safety. You are not trying to learn a new law. You are simply pivoting that same drive towards a higher identity. Not because I say it so, but because that is how this river is designed to move. This is the mirror that frees you. If your current patterns keep returning, it isn't because you're weak. It is because the place you're living from still feels safer than the place you're trying to reach. The work is not forcing yourself to want it more. The work is shifting where you stand so the new you becomes the safest place in the room. Cue Gate 3. Let's unpack why your system keeps returning you to what feels safe, even when it no longer matches who you know yourself to be. Because the real tension isn't that you don't know what to do. It is that your system keeps returning you to the version of you that you've outgrown. And here's the rub. The current you might be painful, but it's familiar, so it still registers as the safest place to live. Your higher self might be beautiful, but it's unfamiliar. Your body tags it as uncertain. Anything uncertain is treated as potentially dangerous, so it gets blocked on contact until you can prove that it is safe to inhabit in the body. And that is precisely when the shift happens.
Defeat. Game over.
Now imagine you're standing beside a river that should be flowing, but instead it hesitates, it drifts and keeps looping back. The water pools. It tries to run, but it keeps catching on debris, branches, logs, stones, and underneath, the riverbed is uneven. So in some places it surges, in others it circles, unsure where forward even is. Let's look at the metaphor ingredients. Let's take a pause. You do not need to memorize 10 items. Just hold this. Identity sets the direction and safety sets the speed. And the rest of the river starts to organize around what your system treats as survivable. Now let me walk you through it. The water is your living identity, your identity in motion, and every identity comes with a felt state, like the water's temperature and turbulence. An identity is what you select. Your subconscious is the operating system that boots it, runs it, and keeps it running in the background. So the real question is not, do I want this identity? It is my system running this identity as safe enough to keep online? In the short run, it tends to take the shape of the riverbed that it is flowing over. The man with the shovel standing by the riverbank is your conscious mind, the part of you that can choose, interrupt, and act on purpose. This is your Kaizen power, the 1%. One rep, one boundary, one small decision repeated. His fuel is immediate structure, a clear next step, and a deadline. But even then, willpower fatigues fast. He's not there to overpower the whole river with brute force. He is there to make the first cut, clear the first blockage, and place the first constraint so the water has somewhere new to go. And once that first cut exists, the next step is not more effort. The next step is structure. So stronger banks, a cleaner terrain, and tighter gates, so the river keeps flowing in the new direction without having to fight it every day. Conscious control can steer, but it is capacity limited and state dependent, which is why lasting change has to be transferred into the automatic systems. Willpower works, but it doesn't scale. Systems do. The riverbanks are your boundaries and constraints. What your life permits, prevents, and protects. Strong, steep banks are clean boundaries and structure. So, for example, supportive people, predictable routines, time buffers, prepared options, and these keep the river steady when weather hits. Soft or broken banks are leaky boundaries. So, toxic people, chaotic rhythms, porous access, constant temptation, no buffers. And this is where one external shock can flood the system and pull the river back into old routes. The terrain is everything around your river. Your environment, so home, work rhythm, social circle, culture. This is the context your system is constantly responding to. The terrain feeds the river with cues all day long. What feels normal, what feels rewarding, what feels risky, what gets repeated. Environment can influence identity and vice versa. A horse, for example, can trample a riverbank and the river reroutes instantly. That's environment changing identity fast. But water can also wear down rock inch by inch until the bank moves. That's identity changing environment through repetition. One is sudden, the other is accumulation. If the terrain changes, the river can get disturbed, but your identity water determines whether you flood, freeze, or reestablish and keep moving. Hidden along the river are gates, channel locks, and sluices. That is your reticular activating system, or the RAS, which is the brain's gatekeeper. It decides what gets in, what gets magnified, and where your attention is allowed to travel. If the old story of "I can't keep weight off," for example, is still written on those gates, they keep opening into the old channel, even while you speak a new identity out loud. Lying in that riverbed is the debris, your visible patterns and coping moves. The texts you keep rereading but never answer, the tasks you keep postponing, the doom scrolling, the over-explaining, the I'll start on Monday, the money avoidance, the half-finished projects, the situationships you keep tolerating because they are familiar. They look like separate problems, but they are surface clutter that collected around the same underlying map. Whatever your system has learned is safe enough to repeat. The riverbed is your subconscious mind. In the short run, the riverbed does shape where the water naturally goes. That's why you default to old habits. In the long run, however, sustained water flow, which is the identity you keep inhabiting, plus repeated choices reshape the riverbed. That's how rewiring happens. It sets the default grooves. So what repeats, what feels automatic, and what feels natural, and also what your system calls normal. It was carved over years by repetition, family cues, school wins, and wounds. So it strongly influences where your identity tends to flow at first. But here's the upgrade. The water is not powerless. When you keep running a new identity through the channel, that repeated flow starts carving a new bed. Over time, what was once effort becomes automatic because the default has changed. The flow rate of the water is your rate of change. So when the channel is clear and aligned, the current is strong. Change feels effortless and fast. When the channel is shallow, bent, or blocked, the current slows. It stalls or it even reverses. That's why you can sprint towards your goal for 5 days and then snap back in one weekend. The riverbed still prefers the old direction, so the water simply carries you home. Above the whole valley is the weather. These are external shocks and events you don't fully control, even when your intentions are pure. Some days the sky is calm and the river can settle. Other days the weather turns, so grief, conflict, sudden deadlines, an unexpected money hit, illness, a family emergency. The point isn't that you failed because the weather changed. It's that storms change the conditions of movement. They can swell the river, flood the banks, stir up debris, and make an old route feel tempting again. So the work isn't pretending weather won't happen. The work is building a river system that can keep moving even when life turns. When the weather turns, strong banks stop the flood. Weak banks turn every storm into a reroute. And far downstream is the destination, your vision, not a fantasy avatar, but the coastline your life will eventually carve if the riverbed, the weather, the gates, and the environment stay aligned long enough. When your progress collapses after a few days, it's not a willpower issue, it's a systems issue. ANZA shows you what you can directly change, what you can't control, and how to shift the levers that actually move the river. So your life starts flowing toward the vision you already see. This is why results can feel slow even when you're doing everything right. The deeper pattern hasn't updated yet, and outcomes don't follow effort alone, they follow identity. Let's take a real life example. You decide to live as someone who trains and eats clean, not as a goal, but as who you are. That's the water. Then you take small shovel actions. You book 2 gym slots, you prepare a simple meal, set a bedtime alarm. You build banks, so you protect a training window, you stop buying trigger snacks, you keep weeknights low drama. You shape the terrain, so you lay out your gym clothes, you plan weekends so they don't erase your weekdays. You open gates so your attention starts spotting what matches this life in terms of people, places, content, and routines. Debris loosens, so less doom scrolling, fewer I'll start Monday spirals because it fits you less. The riverbed rewrites over time. Hard and unsafe becomes normal, so your flow increases. You decide faster, you stay consistent with less friction, and then shock hits, stress, conflict, grief, money wobble, but your banks hold. You bend, resume, and you keep moving. And the destination stops being a finish line. It becomes your baseline. For examples in other domains like relationships, purpose, wealth, there's a link in the description. Now you can see why this metaphor matters. If you try to change the water without reshaping the riverbed, you keep getting the same drift, the same loops, the same flood and drought cycle. But when you can see what's under the water, you stop fighting yourself. You stop moralizing your habits. You work with the system. And once you can see the system, you can reshape it.
This is a public service announcement.
Affirmative.
Merging.
We need backup now.
Connection terminated.
We need backup now.
give up hope. He wants to give up hope now. He wants to give up hope, yo. He wants to give up hope. He wants to give up hope now.
Oh, Naiwa. Oh, Naiwa. Oh, Naiwa. Oh, Naiwa. Oh, Naiwa.
So we're going to look at safety as law, not mood. You do not have to take this on blind faith. Safety in your nervous system is not a vibe. It behaves like a law, not moral, not motivational, mechanical. If you step off a chair, gravity does not negotiate. Your nervous system is the same kind of consistent. When a state is tagged safe, you move toward it. When a state is tagged unsafe, you pull away. This is why Neville could speak so boldly about imagination. Neville said, "Occupy the end scene until it feels real." His mentor, Abdullah, made that brutally practical. He guarded the line. You probably know the story. Neville wanted to travel from New York to Barbados with no clear way to afford it. Abdullah, his mentor, told him to go to sleep each night as if he was already in his family home in Barbados, and to walk through his days as a man who had already arrived. Weeks passed, nothing seemed to be happening, and Neville went back to Abdullah to say, "It is almost Christmas, I am still in New York." Abdullah refused to entertain that panic. He would not reopen the subject. He basically said, "We will not discuss this again. You are already in Barbados." Abdullah knew that if Neville kept treating Barbados as a distant wish, the nervous system would keep his current reality as the safe default. By insisting, "You are already there," he was guarding the inner state that allows the field to move. The tickets and circumstances that finally appeared were just reality catching up to that deeper safety. In ANZA language, Abdullah was enforcing a safety line. Stay inside the chosen safe identity long enough for reality to reorganize around it. Let me show you the same idea in math 3 ways. First, the basic law, the snapshot. Threat at a moment scales with 3 things: sensitivity, speed, and identity gap. Now the same idea in a more continuous form. In continuous form, it's the same law expressed as a rate. Threat at time t scales with your sensitivity, and the rate your identity is shifting at that time. In other words, it's not how big is the change, it's how fast is the change happening right now. In the differential form, speed is baked into the rate term, so we don't need a separate v. And when we integrate that over time, we get total load, the accumulated strain or the total threat your system carried across the whole attempt. In this masterclass, we'll only use the basic threat law. Everything else is bonus math for later. So what do these letters mean in plain English? T is perceived threat, how much your system resists this change right now. K is your sensitivity constant, so how reactive your system is to change. V is speed of change, how fast you're trying to shift. Delta I is the identity gap, how far the new you is from the current you. The distance between 2 identities is essentially the identity gap. Now let's take two simple worked examples, high versus low threat score. And the threat score is between 0 and 100. So if the score goes above 100, we just cap it at 100, because past the red line, your system is already filing this under emergency. Take example 1. Let's say your sensitivity is 4 out of 10. That means change registers loudly, even when you're trying to do the right thing. Your speed is 3 out of 10, not bad at all. You're not going full throttle. But your identity gap is, let's say, 5 out of 10. That's a big jump. So your threat score is 4 times 3 times 5, which is 60. Now we read this as 60 out of 100. That's why it feels urgent and unsafe, not because you're lazy, but because the jump is too large for the system you're asking to carry it. Let's take a second example. Now, we'll focus on the sensitivity system on purpose. Let's pretend your sensitivity is 9 out of 10. If your sensitivity is 9 out of 10, you don't argue with it. You design around it, because when K is high, your freedom is in the other two dials. So if you keep speed and gap low, it then becomes sustainable. So retaining the sensitivity of 9, and let's pretend a speed of 1 and a gap of 1, then you're looking at 9 times 1 times 1, which is 9. So 9 out of 100. Not bad at all. But if you try to, let's say, rush and leap at the same time, it overloads instantly. So if we take 9 times 9 times 9 across the three variables, then you're looking at a score of 729. And because this is capped at 100 out of 100, you then see that the system moves into emergency mode immediately. And that's the burst, the crash, and the return. So if you're high sensitivity, the move is never push harder. The move is to keep the speed and the identity jumps small enough that your system never calls it an emergency. And this is what I'm advocating for. Do not fight your biology. Lower T, lower threat. You lower T by doing one of three things. You can reduce the speed, so this then slows the pace of change. You can reduce the delta I, which is the identity gap, so you don't jump to the highest identity first. You step into the nearest believable version, and then the next, and then the next. You can also reduce K by building safety through proof and predictability. And when T stays low, the total load stays low, which is why the change becomes sustainable. This is a teaching model, so the goal isn't the exact number, it is the direction of travel. So lower any one dial and the whole threat score drops. For those of you who think in physics, there's another way to see this. In quantum mechanics, there is this strange behavior where two particles can be linked so that a change in one is reflected in the other instantaneously, no matter how far apart they are. This is called quantum entanglement. I am not saying your life is literally quantum. I'm saying the pattern is similar. Think of your identity and your visible reality like entangled partners. Change the internal state consistently and the external state has to catch up even if it lags in time. Selection is fast, it is instantaneous. Playback is slower. MC1124 says, believe you have received and it will be yours. The receiving happens at the moment of belief. The delay is the human system catching up. This is why safety is non-negotiable. James 1:68 warns about double-mindedness. In ANZA language, that is flicker. You select, then you unselect. Safety is what stops the flicker. You enter the end scene, accept it as final, and refuse to reopen the question, not from force, but from rest, from feeling safe. This is what is called faith. Absolute, unwavering safety. So now you have the proof. This pattern is consistent no matter which language you speak. Next, we'll make it personal. In Gate 5, I'll show you what threat looks like in real life, what safety looks like in real life, and I'll give you tiny experiments you can run today to start the switch. The litmus test. I want to answer the quiet question. How do I know this will actually work for me? So we're going to test it in real time, not with a big transformation plan, but with 4 tiny tests. These are not discipline challenges. They are nervous system experiments. Your only job is to notice this. When you make the new state even 1% safer, the next right action gets easier. That becomes your litmus test. Not my words, your own system. We'll start with what threat looks like in real time, because this is how your system is trying to feel safe the only way it currently knows how. We'll then look at the safety inversions of the same. So we'll start with the all or nothing movement threat. What to do? Notice how you frame movement when you're dysregulated. It's either go hard or don't go at all. If you do move, it becomes punishment, not care. What to notice? Starting feels heavy because your body thinks it's signing up for a war. You delay, you avoid, or you crash after a burst because the whole thing was coded as threat. The doom scroll to crash sleep threat. What to do? Watch the pattern at night. You stay up scrolling until you drop, or you rest by collapsing with bright screens, noise, and lights still on. What to notice? Your nervous system never fully powers down, so sleep is shallow and recovery is poor. Tomorrow starts with less capacity, which makes everything feel harder and more urgent. The comfort or control eating threat. What to do? Notice the swing. Either convenience and comfort food to self-soothe, or rigid food rules loaded with guilt and I've blown it. What to notice? Food stops being nourishment and becomes emotional regulation or self-control theater. That tension makes your cravings louder and your decisions more reactive. The attack voice self-talk threat. What to do? Catch the default script. I'm lazy. I'm hopeless. Then the follow-up. Using criticism as motivation to try to force change. What to notice? Your body tightens, your energy drops, and you start avoiding the very actions you need. The attack voice creates threat, and threat collapses consistency. So that's the threat pattern. The 5-minute movement. What to do? Do 5 minutes of movement. Walk, stretch, one simple exercise. Before you start, tell your body, we only do 5 minutes, no punishment. What to notice? How much easier is it to start when your system knows it is not signing up for a war? Do you feel a small pull to continue after 5 minutes precisely because it felt safe? That is safety turning action into normal. The soft bedtime. What to do? Tonight, move your bedtime 15 minutes earlier. Frame it as kindness, not achievement. Tell your body, we're doing this so you can rest. No scrolling in bed, dim light, quiet, sleep when it comes. What to notice? Does your system resist less than it does with a 1-hour overhaul? Do you feel slightly more willing because it feels smaller and safer? That willingness is safety, not willpower. The gentle plate. What to do? At one meal tomorrow, keep your normal food, but change the state you eat it in. Slow down slightly. Pause halfway. Ask, what would feel kind right now? Give yourself permission to leave a bite or two if you want to. What to notice? Do you feel less urgency, less guilt, or less finish it by law energy? Does your body relax when it knows it has choice? That is safety shaping behavior more effectively than strict rules. The self-talk swap. What to do? Catch one moment tomorrow when you would normally attack yourself internally. Swap the line once. Try, of course this feels hard. My system has been trying to protect me. Keep it simple. One swap. What to notice? Does your chest, throat, or belly soften even slightly after the new line? That softness is your nervous system registering less threat, not positive thinking. These are small on purpose because the point is not performance, it is evidence. When you can feel even a 1% shift into safety, you've started the reversal. And over time, one day the old patterns begin to feel heavier than the new ones. Procrastination stops feeling like relief. Doom scrolling stops feeling like rest. That isn't willpower, that's your safety system switching allegiance. And once it switches, momentum becomes natural. Cue Gate 6. We've seen that your system follows safety first, always, no matter which identity is offering it. So think of change like a control panel with 3 gauges. Speed, that's how fast you're trying to change. Pressure, the threat load your nervous system feels as you change. And power, the usable energy left for real transformation after safety has taken its share. Meaning, the system allocates resources to not dying first, and then whatever is left can go to transformation. Most systems slam speed into the red on day 1. That immediately spikes pressure, which is your threat load. And once pressure spikes, your nervous system diverts power into one job first: stabilizing safety, lowering the alarm, trying to make sure you don't die. So even if you feel fired up, the usable power left for real change collapses. You get a burst of action, then a crash, then the system pulls you back to the old identity because it's the fastest place it knows how to feel safe. ANZA does the opposite. We regulate speed so pressure stays low and power can stay available. When those gauges sit inside the safety zone, your body stops resisting and starts cooperating. Change stops feeling like a fight and starts feeling like a reroute. That's why ANZA doesn't start at habits and willpower. It starts at safety and identity. We don't only ask, who do you want to become? We ask, how do we make that self feel safe enough to inhabit? When your internal map updates through repeated proofs of safety, the same actions you've tried before finally compound because your identity and your safety system are no longer pulling in opposite directions. This is the ANZA method in one line. We don't rely on motivation, we reduce threat. We don't start at habits, we start at safety. Safety is what decides what becomes sustainable. Body is where we applied it first. Next, we move to mind, because once the river starts to shift, your thoughts will try to fog the path, and we're not going to let them. And I'll leave you with a question. What would change right now if you stopped demanding transformation and started designing safety? See you at the next one.